Hello and welcome on this Tuesday morning, April 2nd, to a LinkedIn Live, how to write a prompt for artificial intelligence. Thank you for those that are here promptly for this LinkedIn Live. Yes, many prompt puns as I wrote in my LinkedIn post, prompting you to be here for this discussion on prompts. I will stop. I'll prompt myself to stop at some point, but I'm on a roll, so I'll just keep going. Thanks everyone for joining me as we begin April, and I'm excited to be here to start this month. I'm glad we're not starting on April Fools. I'm a little superstitious. Anytime I do something on April Fools, I'm wondering, somebody pranking me? Am I pranking myself? Nothing really happened to me on April Fools, luckily. I'm always just a little bit anxious that someone's doing something, my kids, my wife, friend, something. I have a few friends that are, that are good at that. And I'm very susceptible to those type of things. But luckily, April 1st went fairly unremarkable past me. So glad you could be here on this discussion today. I'm excited to talk about it because as I talked about last week, if you're starting to integrate Copilot and again just using generative artificial intelligence more, prompt writing is something we have to get better at, and it's something that we don't really know what that is. I mean, for me, that went into learning how to use databases at the University of Waterloo. We learned about how to use SQL, search query language, and in ways to interact with a database or other places that we need to ask the 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 calculation, the database, the Excel spreadsheet of something. That's slightly different here because generative AI is doing a lot of the legwork for us, but we have to use generative AI in a way that's the most efficient in terms of how we ask questions, which is not the same way we would ask questions of a database or the same questions we'd ask of a search engine like Google or Bing. And even for myself, I'm on a learning curve with this, and there are places that help us with this and how to write prompts. So the first thing is just to kind of change your brain and to say, yes, you should be able to ask any type of question to ChatGPT or Gemini, and that's a part of the playful, just exploring these generative artificial intelligence tools. But just to get a little bit better with playing, I talk a lot about explore, exploit in the beginner's mind. You can actually get better at playing and without exactly moving into the exploit mode. What that means is you just learn how to use the tools in a more playful way, but just slightly more advanced play, but still not entering the exploit. Like, I need to do this now to improve my productivity or do this analysis, which again, go ahead and do that. But I still think we're in a learning mode with this. So that's what we'll talk about today. And I'll demonstrate a few things on this. Just before we begin, there's a ton of news in generative artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence in general. The US and UK agreeing to work on AI legislations. I'll post about that later today or tomorrow. We have Claude, which is generative artificial intelligence. It works sort of on this ethical model. And these are ex OpenAI board members and others that felt that OpenAI was not necessarily being ethical in the way they were developing their generative artificial intelligence software, which is ChatGPT, and moving towards artificial general intelligence or strong artificial intelligence. And there was the fracture that resulted in Sam Altman getting fired, getting hired by Microsoft, and getting rehired, and certain board members leaving. That's not available in my country yet, Claude. I'm in Canada, but I'm on the wait list. But it's interesting just to talk about the different approaches to generative artificial intelligence. So that's going to be next week. I'm just going to do a what's happening in generative artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence news. Also, John Stewart, if you like him, just had his let's just say segment on artificial intelligence, and he had an interesting perspective with that because he was employed by Apple, John Stewart, with his show called I believe it's called The Problem with John Stewart. And what he revealed, and if you haven't seen the video, it just came out yesterday on YouTube because he hosts the Daily Show every Monday, just once a week, and he just disclosed that Apple asked him not to talk about artificial intelligence on the program that he was with Apple on, and also not to talk to a regulator about sort of what it means for big tech. And this was a regulator that's working sort of at the U.S. federal side at looking at big tech companies if they're really too big and need to maybe have more regulations or even be broken up. And Apple asked them not to do that. So that's something I'll talk about next week. But let's get into this: how to write a prompt. I want to be prompt. I'm already not being as prompt as I would like to be when it comes to discussing the subject. So how are we going to discuss this? First, let me define what a prompt is, because a prompt and a query, are they just the same word to describe a question? Well, there is a definition for a prompt. A prompt is the information slash data, sentences or questions that you enter into a generative AI tool. But the way we ask a generative AI tool is not the same way we want to ask a search engine for something like, hey, um, what do you think about the weather today, right? That might be something we would ask to a generative AI tool like ChatGPT. To a search engine, we might say, tell me the weather, right? So we might just add more emotive aspects to a generative AI tool like Gemini or ChatGPT, but there needs to be more thought through it. And this is the relationship that I have, or I believe we should have, with prompt quality and generative AI results. The higher the prompt quality, the higher the likelihood the AI results are more to our liking, more usable, and we're able to just maybe take more of that information and go with it. Now, this chart, you might say, what's the source of this chart? Well, this chart came from Gemini, where I asked it to create a chart that shows the high quality of prompt, the better the AI results. And again, was that prompt good? That prompt, again, where I didn't follow the prompt structures that I'm going to talk about shortly with you, produced the output that I wanted. Could it have produced a better output? That's the question. We can judge the results of how good your prompt is by the output, and then we can refine it. But we do want to start getting into this sense of how do we get better at asking questions with generative AI, which is almost like having this partner, not a sentient partner, in helping us with certain solutions. So that is something that I'm trying to get better at myself, and that's the topic of our conversation today. So where do we go for this? How do we learn to write a prompt? Can we just play around? And as I said, there is a lot of play here, but you know who is trying to help us write prompts? A lot of these generative AI producers like OpenAI. So let's go to OpenAI and see what they say about how to write a prompt. And actually, I think this is the best place. This is one, to me, very technical. Now, part of this with their application program interface, or API, this might be advanced, but there are some nuggets in here that we can apply to how to better write prompts. So let me read this out. This comes from OpenAI. Rules of thumbs and examples. One, the first thing is you want to use the latest model of generative artificial intelligence, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. You always want to make sure you're using the latest model because it has the best data. Because obviously, the richer the data, the better the version, and also not just the data, it's gone through the general adversarial networks, GANs, that we've talked about in the past, and it's getting better. Every day and every version that comes out, the generative artificial intelligence is learning just like we learn. So it's getting better. You always want to use the most latest model. So that's fine. Number two on this list from OpenAI, put instructions at the beginning of the prompt and use these hashtags to separate instruction and context. Now that's interesting, right? So it has an example here. So the example here is summarize the text below as a bullet point list of the most important points. And then text input here. What it does, what it's asking us to do is separate these out, separate instructions and context. So here's the instructions. And then for ChatGPT, use hashtags to give the text that we want it to potentially summarize or search. So sometimes what we do in ChatGPT, we might, in one block sentence, and that's what I would do. I'm going to show ChatGPT. I would have something like, let me share my screen again. There's going to be a lot of screen sharing in this one. Find the words cat in the sentence. There are many cats in our neighborhood, right? And I don't like cats. I like cats. I'm just using this as an example, right? So the word cat appears twice. Okay, so it did a good job there. But what we're trying to do is behavior. What I should have written, according to ChatGPT, to work in the behavior is first the instructions: find the word cat, and then the hashtags to say here's the sentence I would like you to find it. It's separating instructions and context. Now, in this really simple example, it doesn't probably matter. But when we're dealing with more sophisticated text, more quantity of text, that type of help can really go into more precision. Now, ChatGPT has potentially a different way of separating context and instructions than Gemini and other generative AI such as Copilot. But the idea is separating instructions and context. Okay, so number three, and again, I'll post this article on my LinkedIn feed. Be specific, descriptive, and as detailed as possible about the desired context, outcome, length, format. So, what this is saying in general is the more details, the better. The more precision in your prompt, the better the output. So, one of the things it says here as a less effective is write a poem about OpenAI, and it could do that. But if you want it to be more specific and have a better output, write a short, inspiring poem about OpenAI focusing on the recent DALL-E product. It's just precision. And so a lot of us as professionals, I'm a CPA, we're good with being precise with our questions because as an auditor, I have to be precise when I'm asking questions, closed-ended or open-ended, to get information. So we want to, when we ask questions of ChatGPT, really think what more detail can we have to ask it. So, the very simple question: there are many cats in our neighborhood. I don't like cats. If I wanted something for ChatGPT with cats, like please write a poem about cats. This this is great. I don't know why cats is the theme for today, but it is. This is great. It's going to write a poem, but what type of poem? What type of cat? So this is a great poem, but what we want to do is when we're playing, be more precise. Now, again, this is not anything that would help me with my work, right? A poem about cats, unless you're in the poetry about cats business, catpoetry.com. I'm just claiming the website. But what we're trying to do is build habits to how to write prompts. So this is why I like playing with this. I want to play with it in maybe playful ways with cats, and then maybe apply it to what I do as an auditor, as an educator, as an instructional designer. All right, let's continue going down our list. Articulate the desired output format through examples. So the more examples we can provide in terms of what we're looking for to ChatGPT, the Gemini, to Copilot, the better. So we can give examples in this. So one of the examples that says in ChatGPT in this article: extract the entities mentioned in the text below. A lot of the examples in this article is about searching for information, which is one of the heavily used um, ways in which a lot of professionals are trying to exploit ChatGPT and Copilot, is to look for information. So what we want to do with this is give a show and tell, like extract the important entities mentioned in the text below. First, extract all of the company names, then extract all the people names, then extract specific topics. So what it's doing, it's giving an ordering to how we would like the data extracted. And this level of, this is the way we would want to see the information. So maybe we have priority in how we want the information extracted: people, names, locations. We give it that information, the generative artificial intelligence, again, to be more precise and give us a better output. Number 5 on this list, and again, I'll have this article posted. This is the best, one of the best lists I've seen. Like I read another article on how to write prompts, and it was good, but it's too generic. This is very precise. Again, it's very specific to ChatGPT, but the general concepts apply to any generative AI that you're using. Start with zero shot, then few shot. Neither of them work, then fine tune. So what you want to do is, one, see if you can provide a um, a query that gives you nothing back, right? So what it's basically asking you to do is go from narrow to broad, which is actually a principle in other searches, that you want it to be precise and just say, here's what I'm looking for. Extract keywords from the text below. You got nothing back, right? And notice that the instruction. So here's the instructions. Here's the text. You put keywords. Keywords wasn't enough description to give anything back, but that's okay because now what we can do is see what we need to do to either divide the data that we're giving it to find keywords and to get more results. So from going from zero to more results, what they call zero shot to a few shot and then fine tune, we kind of start from a place where we're not getting a whole bunch of results from ChatGPT, and maybe the results are just, it's too much. It's not really getting to what we want. And we're going from, hey, this game came back with nothing. Let's maybe shorten the text parameters that ChatGPT or Gemini is shortening is looking through. Maybe add more descriptives to the instructions, and then see what that looks like. So that's an interesting thought, right? Because for me, naturally, I would actually like to maybe have a broad look at the data, maybe extract a whole bunch of things and then maybe narrow in. But here they're saying maybe a generative AI tool works better when you go zero shot, which means no results come back, to a few shots, to a few shots come back, to then more, right? And getting, it's about quality over quantity, right? Which is, again, somewhat of a sort of old way of looking at maybe a search engine or a database, but we're trying to get the best results in working with this. And the metaphor I would use is that you're working with a person, right? In a sense, like the more information, the way you break up data, the way you try to get to what you need by working with that individual and helping them help you, that's the way you want to look at generative artificial intelligence. Number 6 from this list: reduce fluffy and imprecise descriptions, which I am prone to. This is a good prompt for prompts for me. So the example here is the description for this product should be fairly short, a few sentences only. So this is actually good, just general effective writing. Maybe be more active voice and be less fluffy, or what they call passive voice. So, what does fairly short mean? What is few sentences? Be more precise. And so the example that OpenAI is saying, instead of that sentence, here's the better prompt. Use a 3 to 5 sentence paragraph to describe this product. So again, be more precise. Don't use fairly, mostly, some of. Give a number, give precision where it makes sense. Okay, number 7, and there I believe there's, I think, 8 or 9. It gets more complicated because if you're trying to design GPTs, generative pre-training transformer, specific, if you have the paid version, specific queries for work that you're doing, then there's more thinking about how you help ChatGPT learn about what you're trying to use it for. But this is just general, like if you have the free account or just using ChatGPT, these are good helpful tips for prompts. Instead of just saying what not to do, say what to do instead. So here's the example. The following is a conversation between an agent and a customer. Do not ask username or password. Do not repeat. So what So in this case, the customer saying, I can't log into my account. So what this is saying for generative AI, which I wouldn't have thought about, is positive framing is better. So instead of saying, do not ask username or password, do not repeat, this is saying the agent will attempt to diagnose the problem and suggest a solution while refraining from asking questions related to a very specific type of uh, uh, entry in terms of username and password. Because what this is trying to say is that in this generative AI output, we don't want the agent to ask for username and password because that could compromise privacy and be a security risk. We want the generative artificial intelligence to say, don't do that, but we need other diagnostic information. But rather than saying, do not ask for username and password, it's first provide a solution and then refrain from doing those things. Because where do you want the focus? If in this case, what OpenAI is telling us is that the focus will potentially be in terms of the result quality. Don't ask passwords, don't ask username, because we don't want that information from our customers. But that could distract, just like a person, what we want the artificial intelligence to do, which is to diagnose and troubleshoot the customer's problems. And so we put that at the front and put the do not do's later. Interesting. And again, it's hard to say, am I going to have these 8 things in my head anytime I'm going to interact with ChatGPT or Gemini? I think the underlying theme in here is think about how you would train and talk to a person. right? How would you want them to especially like and I think what type of person? Someone who's at the trainee level, someone who's like an intern or a co-op student. How would you want them to to understand your question and come up with the best results? Um, Descriptions, separating context from instructions, being clear about what the primary goals are. I mean, this is where this list generates from. This is actually something I might use for a communication course when you're talking about two people talking to each other, a leader and a subordinate. These are sort of good instructional models and feedback models for them. The last one is very specific. Code generation specific. Use leading words to nudge the model toward a particular pattern. So this is a little bit more for developers than it is for maybe the common user like myself. So that one I'm gonna say we'll put a pause. The first seven we can use. You and I can use. I'm gonna say I'm not someone who goes in and does coding or works with the code. I'm not. I'm saying that passively. I don't do that. But the first seven is just be more precise, get better results. So you should play around with that. I've been playing around with that with the cat question, right? And I can do more things, separate. You might say, I might have written, I do not like black cats. So please identify the black cats in this text. Again, what am I trying to do here? I do not like black cats doesn't necessarily help with the primary goal of finding that term. Now, let's just say you're struggling with prompt writing and you say to yourself, I'm still don't get it. Well, there's an AI tool for AI tools, right? And so that is also this is actually at the heart of what happened with Gemini when Gemini was first released a few weeks ago, or really a month ago, and there was issues potentially with its output, especially around images that the prompt that you were giving Gemini, Google Gemini, was going through a prompt analyzer to change up your prompt so it could be best digested by the generative artificial intelligence, Gemini. And that might have been some of the problems that were coming back in terms of the images not satisfying a lot of users or being somewhat derisive in terms of what was happening with the outputs from Gemini. There's active ways. So if you feel like prompt writing is challenging because it's just not something that's coming intuitively, or it's taking you longer to write a prompt, and you want a little bit more efficiency, well, there are prompt tools out there, tools to actually help you with prompts. So what's one of them? One of them is called Prompt Perfect. It integrates with ChatGPT. So write a story about a cat, right? And Prompt Perfect is going to go through, and I have to, sign in for this, but Prompt Perfect would go through, would take that sentence and try to understand better. It might ask you questions, it might try to flush it out, and actually go through the protocol that we just talked about so you don't have to carry that with you. So, for something like Prompt Perfect is an interesting way to say maybe I need help with the question that I'm asking because I still don't understand this relationship between myself and generative artificial intelligence in terms of the way I'm working with them. Because again, I think a lot of the way in which we work with tools like traditional tools, Excel, databases, even search engines, is not the best way to interact in terms of questions with generative artificial intelligence tools. So this is something to think about. Play around with it. I'll put that article out there promptly. A few last prompts for those that are here, so you can take a look. The last thing I'd like to talk about today is last week I went through um, my Copilot integration with Microsoft products. So Copilot is now here inside of my Excel and Word document, like every single Microsoft app. There is now a ribbon that says Analyze Data and Copilot. So it's there. So when I tried to demo the Excel version, I had an issue, and I'm learning this too. One of the issues for those that have the Microsoft Business Standard and are not an enterprise user, like a large organization that has a license to this, is that if you're like myself, a small business, and I purchased the annual subscription to have Copilot integrated with all my Microsoft apps, is it has to be connected to OneDrive. And I use Dropbox more than OneDrive. And so when I load a spreadsheet, this is coming from a data set that I saved from Kaggle, which is a site that I talked about in terms of ways to get uh, test data if you just want to play around with Copilot inside Excel. That when I opened the file, it was being opened from Dropbox, and it wasn't inside a OneDrive, which is when I tried to run the audit analyze not the audit analyzer, but the analyze data and and Copilot, it didn't work because it was not within. Now it's there. So I just wanted to point that out because it drove me nuts, and I'm a perfectionist. It's like, why isn't this working? So now analyze data is here. So this is an accounting variable set that I got from Kaggle, and a colleague of mine, David Treher, also sent it to me. So just by pressing analyze data, which is a new feature in my ribbon, which comes with the Copilot integration. Look at this. This is just a spreadsheet that has budget data for the year, and it's already like understands without me doing anything. Some things and some ways to break down the information graphically. I mean, for me to put these charts together myself would take about 5 to 10 minutes, and I'd have to know what I'm trying to get out of this information, use the chart feature. Within 2 seconds, I have data. I can even, and it even says here, insert pivot table. So I can just click this button, and here I have a pivot table for cost of goods sold. It takes time to do a pivot table. I did that in 2 seconds. Like when I don't work with pivot tables, it takes me a long time to figure out how to do a pivot table because that skill set of how to do something, it needs to be repetitive. You need to be working pivot tables or macros, quite frequently. Otherwise, you lose that ability to say, "Here's a data set. What do I do with it?" With this is just the analyzed data set. This is not even looking at Copilot's integration with this. So I didn't want to give too much in this LinkedIn Live because there's a lot happening, but that's cool stuff. That to me is game changing stuff. Now I can do more. I can ask for more charts. I can do Copilot to say, and again, using the prompt. Now this is the connection. Now when I ask Copilot, which is integrated with this, um, I want to use the prompt like we talked about just in the segment before about how to write a prompt. I don't want to write, please analyze this data, Copilot, or what do you think of this data? I want to say, what am I trying to do with this data? Is there instruction? Is there context? Is there precision? Do I want to start with the primary goals? Do I make sure I'm not using fluffy language? So all of the things that we talked about with the prompt, now I can play with this data set. And again, I'm playing with this. This data set has no meaning to me. So I'm gonna play with it. I've already seen it to use pivot tables to break down the data just automatically, and I can use this with more precision. So I will have a Copilot, and the way I'm going to break this down for LinkedIn Live is a Copilot Excel, a Copilot Word, not just have one LinkedIn with all of the Copilot integrated apps, but just I think the most one for me as a CPA, as someone who works in the space as an auditor or CPA, is Excel. So I'm going to have one dedicated to Excel. Watch out for that one, and I'm going to play with it. I'm here to play and to show you what I'm doing right, where I'm making mistakes, where I'm struggling, because I'm struggling with some of these in terms of just feeling efficient. But I'm also in the playful beginner's mind, so I don't necessarily feel the stress that, oh, I need to be an expert at this. This came out just a month and a half ago for those that are not enterprise wide users that don't work in a big organization. So many things happening. My head explodes. Hopefully, you didn't get too much of that in this session. I'm getting more excited about this. Super excited, maybe too much. Anyway, that's my prompt to end our discussion on how to write prompts, and I'll put that article out there. If you guys have any questions for me, I'll do a LinkedIn Live next week. I think I'm just going to do a generative AI update on what's happening because I talked about the UK, United States agreeing on some framework for artificial intelligence regulation. The EU is going to make their AI regulation law soon, and we have Claude, and we have John Stewart, just a lot of stuff. So I want to do next week as a sort of a catch up, and then stay tuned for the Excel Copilot, the Word Copilot, and me just playing around with that. I'll put that out there to LinkedIn Live. I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go take a little rest because this is all a lot of energy going up out, but exciting stuff. for me and this topic. So thanks for watching today. I'm gonna prompt myself off. I'm overusing the word prompt. I know. I know. You can let me know in the comment promptly that I may have gone overboard with the prompt analogies. But thanks for watching the LinkedIn Live today. And next week we'll see you again. Take care, everyone.